85, and, and I've lost a son. I lost my first wife, and I lost my second wife. And I know what it is to grieve. And it is just a horribly difficult thing.
They broke down the door and found her. I fortunately did not see her. The policeman said, "Sir, stay where you are, and this is what's happened." And it became quite a scene with EMS trucks and police cars and everything, and I'm just sitting in my car in the driveway all by myself, beginning to choke up like I am now, realizing what had happened.
My husband was suffered from kidney disease, and he was on dialysis for about 2 to 3 years. In 2015, in February, we were on our way to church, and he collapsed and died very suddenly. And prior to that, 3 months prior, I experienced a lot of deaths with my mother-in-law, his own mother dying, and then 3 weeks later, my own mother. So I was in quite shock, as you can well imagine, because it was just an overload. And I have 5 children, so they're not all raised yet.
In the beginning, it's like it shatters you, and life is very much then confined to just kind of going through the days, and you feel like you don't fit in the world.
Grief support certainly starts even before a death has occurred, because people anticipating a death are already beginning the grieving process. After a death has occurred, many agencies that focus only on the healthcare part of it have finished their mandate, and so hospice carries on supporting the family, particularly when the grieving process impacts them profoundly. Some of the programs are group programs such as Circle of Hope, which is a non-structured grief group that is facilitated for people with recent losses, and then some more structured groups that will help people work through the feelings and the reactions to grief as they move forward in their journey.
It's really quite difficult for people to call in usually, and I try to be really sensitive to that when they call, because a lot of the time they don't want to call. They don't want to admit that maybe it hurts so much that they might benefit from getting some support from a total stranger. Sometimes people make it to the building, and they know that they want to come in, and it takes all they can muster up, all the strength they can muster up to get into the building. And sometimes as soon as they sit down, then the tears come. We try to be as hospitable as we can. That's kind of the same root as the word hospice, so I think our whole being here is really to provide hospitality to people when they're really not in a good place in their life. Sometimes people aren't aware that they can just call in on their own, and they don't have to be referred by an agency or by their doctor or have had previous hospice connection. Our support is primarily given to people through our volunteers. They are quite highly trained, and they're wonderful, compassionate people who in some cases have been through an experience of grief and loss themselves. Others come to us from professions where they've been helpers in the past and want to give back to the community. Primarily, though, we do like to encourage people to come in and feel the warmth and support of a group of people who are going through something similar to them. Our facilitators really help provide that space for people to feel comfortable.
There are times when those that have been grieving for a period of time and have already faced certain challenges can help and encourage those where the bereavement is fresh, the death has just occurred, so that they can understand that they will get past certain things that face them immediately after a death has occurred.
Suicide is one of those losses that we all have a very difficult time understanding and trying to support people through. It's very traumatic for everyone, for the family in particular, for the community. We have a very unique program here at hospice for members of our community who have experienced the death of a loved one through suicide.
Bereavement can be a very lonely time. It isolates people because their feelings of grief and bereavement are unique to them, and they feel like they're perhaps the only one that has been devastated in this way. And when they find out that others have also gone through this, and some perhaps are maybe a little further along in the journey, and they can draw strength from the fact that this journey is something that they can navigate even though it's difficult. Most of all, the thing that I see in that group is that the people pour their hearts out in a safe environment where they can feel listened to and feel like their grief is meaningful, and that the person that they're remembering is somebody that is still very real to them.
Some of our volunteers are very gifted in supporting children and teenagers. Sometimes it's very difficult for adults to be able to support children and teens, and these volunteers that we have are amazing that way. They can go in and they can provide comfort to a young student and do some hands-on activities with them to help make them comfortable and bring out the conversation about what's happened in their lives and help in the healing process there. Our library here at hospice is a wonderful resource for people. Clients are very encouraged throughout their group process to use the library to help them, and we have a wonderful space here that's very quiet, and people can just come in and take a book and read or borrow it and take it home for a few weeks.
Grieving and mourning a loved one doesn't stay the same. And that doesn't mean that that you don't love them less. The love stays there. And yet life can be good again. And that's what you also learn from other people in the group.
We're with each other. We understand what each of us is experiencing. It's a different experience for all of us, but it's got a common base to it. When I think about the future, I feel now that I can face it.
It was a safe place that I could come where I wasn't going to get judged for what I was feeling. We weren't trying to bottle up these emotions. We were trying to help me to process them. And even to this day, the grief, it's still there, but it's manageable. It's a process. It's always going to be a process, but hospice gave me the tools to understand how to work that process.
You would really do well if you went to hospice. And I said to her, well, he's dead now, it's too late. Isn't that palliative care? And she said, no, that there was a bereavement program. So I immediately went to hospice, and it's history. I mean, I needed the support, and it was the best thing I ever did. When I think about the future, I am hopeful. I'm very hopeful that I will live my life the way I should.